Tell you what, when researching this song, I never thought that Hitchhiker's Guide would be one of the main features, but here we are. From Lydian and Dorian modes to 7/8 time signatures, Paranoid Android by Radiohead is jam-packed full of intricate harmonic, lyrical and all-round compelling motifs and ideas. The 6.5 minute long piece ventures through a variety of verses, choruses, bridges and vamps, broken into 4 distinct components. An opening and a coda, bookending 2 contrasting middle sections, which I'm calling heavy rock and cool rock. The song Paranoid Android is the second track on the album OK Computer, recorded by Radiohead and released in 1997. The song reached number 3 on the UK singles chart, along with Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time, and was also nominated for Best British Single at the 1998 Brit Awards. But what makes this song so intricate, so compelling? Well, let's unpack it. The first thing heard when listening to this song is 4 plucked electronic notes on F. These notes lead into the introduction of the piece, featuring a prominent acoustic guitar riff. The riff becomes inverted between the first and third bars, where instead of going up a major third from E flat to G, it goes down a major third, D to B flat. The whole thing is accompanied by a busy but very well crafted percussion section underneath. Another interesting thing to note here is that the introduction is only 6 bars long. This unexpected dropping of bars helps to launch the song forward, giving it a jolt of energy that moves into the verse. It's also key to note that this intro, like a lot of this song and many of Radiohead's other works, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what key we're in. Hello?
Well, isn't it obvious? There's 2 flats, so it's in B flat major.
Yeah, not quite. See, although it's the obvious choice, B flat doesn't feel like the home chord. Sure, we pass it briefly in the second chord in the song, but it doesn't feel like it wants to rest there.
Oh, okay, well then it has to be G minor, right? G minor is a relative minor of B flat major. They both have 2 flats.
Again, not quite. Although G minor is the relative minor of B flat major, that scale also contains an F sharp with the raised 7th. But there are a lot of F naturals present in this score, including the B flat passing chord. See, by looking closely, I think we're starting in G Aeolian, where the 3rd and the 6th of the scale are both flattened, leaving the 7th as natural. Meaning the chord progression is probably a minor 4, major 3, major 6, minor 1 on 2, minor 1 on 3.
Okay, but if you said there's an E flat, then how do you explain this E natural?
True, I did say that, although here I think we shift from G Aeolian to G Dorian, where it's just the 3 that's flattened, which means it also could be F major, because the G minus 6 on E can also be classed as E diminished 7, which is the 7th in an F major scale. Like I said, sometimes the exact key can be ambiguous. Regardless, the introduction, cut 2 bars short, leads straight into the verse. The verse itself is pretty straightforward for the most part. Everything was set up in the intro, meaning the chords and the rhythms are already familiar to us by the time the vocals come in. But this time, rather than losing 2 bars, it's instead picking up another 2, taking the verse to 10 bars in length. Again, moving from G Aeolian to G Dorian due to the E natural in the melody, which I will come back and talk about later on. After the verse comes the pre-chorus. This is an entirely new section to the previous 2, using only 3 chords. Pretty simple, right? Let's get the easy stuff out of the way first. This section has 7 bars, not 8, not 10, but 7. But now, the first chord actually carries on from the last section, that G minor 6. We then get slapped in the face by an E natural in the melody sung against D minor on F, before using a lot of tension there to release to an E7, a chord that doesn't work in any of the previous modal keys. It took me a while to figure out, I think we're on G Mixolydian here, because it's not E natural, but I'm happy to get it down wrong. The chord section is the same, we're doing 1, 1, 5, 8, 6. C minor, just time out for a second. There's a lot going on in this little section that doesn't really hold much value in the entirety of the whole song. So I'm just going to put it aside, pretend that we understand it, like most musicians do about theory. We're going to pretend we understand it, and we're just going to move on. So we've looked at the opening and we understand it completely. Now it's time to move on to the second section, the heavy rock section, and understand why Mario plays such a big factor on its chord progression. This heavy rock section is broken up into two different parts, what I'm calling a vamp and an interlude. The vamp section consists of a simple guitar bass riff in A harmonic minor, hence the G sharp. The 2 bars are repeated a second time to give us a full 4 bars. The interlude is also 4 bars long, but 3 of which are in 7/8. Now, though we do have an A flat and a B flat here, we have actually modulated into C major, because that is the home chord, or the tonic.
Okay, well, if we're in C major, how do you explain the A flat and the B flat? Like, they're not even in the same key. Like, how?
Ah, you make a fair point. This is what's known as the Aeolian cadence, or the Billy Shears cadence, but most commonly, the Mario cadence.
Mario.
Now, while this chord progression itself has been around for many years, it's most notably tied to the Super Mario franchise, when at the end of a level, you hear this chord progression. These 3 chords appear everywhere in music. You might find them in TV themes. The Beatles have used it. Queen has used it famously. And even some Broadway musicals when they need a big, powerful ending. But what is it? At its simplest, it is a flat 6, flat 7, 1 progression, which in the key of C is our A flat, B flat, and C. This is more notably known as an Aeolian cadence because it uses the Aeolian scale. If we switch from C major to C Aeolian, we see we have the notes for an A flat major and a B flat major, our flat 6 and our flat 7 chords. But we are in C major, so we do need to switch back to have a C major chord, otherwise we'd be left with a C minor. And that's it really, it's just the vamp and the interlude repeated 3 times with vocals added on top. Bit of chromaticism, but not worth looking at, because we have to move on. We've finished the opening, we've finished the heavy rock, now let's have a look at the third section, the cool rock. This section is 21 BPM slower than everything else before it, going from 84 BPM down to just 63. We start with a chromatic descending bass line, moving from C minor to A major, before using a 5/1 to lock the section into D Aeolian. This 5/1 is then repeated, further cementing the key center. The bass then steps down the D Aeolian scale, going from D down to F. The E major to A major chords, however, set up a 2-5-1 back to D minor, the established tonic. However, that resolution to D minor never arrives, as the piece is thrown straight back to C minor to restart the entire descent once more the exact same way, but this time with a melody. The third time we repeat, we add a counter melody, which is a second melody moving separately with different lyrics. So we are just adding layers upon layers upon layers, but not making it busy, because this entire section is just an excuse to take a break for a while before we jump back into the coda, which is basically just the heavy rock section, just shortened a bit. We've got the vamp, we've got the interlude that does that a few times, and then that's the end of the song. Now, of course, we haven't looked at the lyrics yet, but before we do that, here are a few fun facts that I learnt while researching this song. The album title, OK Computer, first came about in 1996 when the band was killing time on their tour bus. They were listening to an audiobook of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when the character Zaphod Beetlebrox says, "OK Computer, I want full manual control now." Tom York liked the line so much that he wrote it down in his notebook and applied it to the album. The original version of this song was over 14 minutes long, including what I can only describe as a long organ interlude slap bang in the middle of the piece. This 14-minute version was played live multiple times when they opened for Alanis Morissette on her Jagged Little Pill tour. It was only when they went into the studio to record it in '97 that they replaced the organ solo and the ending with a simple guitar ending to save time. Ironically, it took the band over a year and a half to fully perfect the new refined version for their own live gigs. But now, the moment you've all been waiting for, a descriptive analysis of the lyrics of Paranoid Android. When asked about the origins of the song in an interview, Tom York explained that the lyrics were based on an unpleasant experience in a noisy bar. Like previously mentioned, OK Computer is a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide, Well, so is the title, Paranoid Android. This is a direct reference to Marvin the Paranoid Android, a bored and depressed robot with a brain 50,000 times more intelligent than that of a human.
I think you ought to know I'm feeling very depressed. Here I am, brain the size of a planet, and they ask me to take you up.
The opening line of the song, "Please could you stop the noise, I'm trying to get some rest from all the unborn chicken voices in my head," is a plea from the narrator to his own mind to stop dwelling over the opinions that he's never expressed. Unborn chicken voices being synonyms for non-spoken, cowardly opinions. The third line, "When I am king, you will be first against the wall with your opinions, which is of no consequence at all," is once again another reference to Hitchhiker's Guide.
Finds the marketing division of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation as a bunch of mindless jerks who'll be the first against the wall when the revolution comes.
Jumping down a fair bit into the second section, we have "Kicking, Squealing, Gucci Little Piggy." According to Tom York, at least, it's a direct reference to the unpleasant bar experience when a woman became quite violent when a drink was spilled on her Gucci dress. The next bit of the melody, in screamed vocals of "You don't remember, why don't you remember my name," is sung in C Dorian. The lyrics are once again a reference to Marvin the Paranoid Android. Marvin is forgotten and ignored in increasingly cruel ways, yet he never lashes out at humans. This is a major contrast to the narrator of the song, who submits to the demands for violence, yelling "off with his head." But now onto my personal favourite part of the entire song, the choir at the beginning of the cool rock section. They begin to follow the bass, walking down from C chromatically down to A. However, they then stop following the bass. Instead of going from A to D, they go from E to D. They then rejoin the bass, going from D down to E, when they move back up through passing tones to the beginning. When the lyrical melody enters, it begins a minor third higher, beginning on the E flat, creating a more rich harmony, and moves in parallel motion down with the bass, going between minor and major. There's also a lot of word painting used here, where the melody moves down every time the word down is sung. On the D minor, the melody coincides with the choir singing in unison. From a great height, however, cements the song in D Aeolian with the E natural present. Once again, word painting is used in the final two heights, leaping a fourth on the first height and a fifth on the second. After all this is repeated, a third vocal line comes in, using a similar shape for each of the three note phrases sung, singing a note, jumping up to the next note in the chord before falling back down to the first. The middle note almost always creates harmonies with the other two voices, creating a brief triad. The final line of this section just outlines the E to the E sus, sticking between the G sharp and the B, and using the A in the sus4 to walk up to the B. The lyrics here once again are used to describe the unpleasant bar experience. "That's it, sir, you're leaving," obviously describing the person who spilled the drink getting kicked out. The crackle of pigskin refers to the Gucci piggy previously mentioned in the song. The dust and the screaming and the panic the vomit further intensifying this commotion. Now, I had to do some research on the yuppies networking, but that seems to refer to a middle-class folk with a well-paying job, a yuppie, interacting with others. The song ends, however, with a beautiful line of sarcasm and irony when the bar fight and the commotion is followed up with "God loves his children," ending the song with no lyrics in the coda, giving us time to rock out before the ending. So that's pretty much it. Hitchhiker's Guide, Lydian, Dorian, Aeolian modes, a bar fight. All of these are things I was not expecting to be writing about when I was analysing this song, but here we are. This song is rich with intricate ideas, advanced music theory, but in a way that makes the song more compelling to listen to, rather than ostracising. Listening back, it's easy to realise how complex this song really is, and gives me a better appreciation for the amount of work that Tom York put into the song. So the question then remains, did Radiohead know what they were doing? Were they consciously thinking about the Lydian scale and how to incorporate that into a song? Probably not. It's more likely that they just gave it a try and it happened to work. But that's the joy of music theory. I guess we'll never know.